Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on your time zone. And welcome to the Buddhist path of awakening. Tonight, we're going to be talking about chapters 5 and 6 of the text. Next week, the reading assignment is going to be 7 and 8. And the week after that, chapter 9, which will be fun. It's on the 6 realms. And Laura is going to be working with that one in part. The week after that, we're going to be doing chapters 10 and 11, which are about taking refuge. And for those of you who would like to take refuge, there's going to be an opportunity. We're going to have a refuge ceremony online, and you can take refuge. And but before that, we're going to go through chapters 10 and 11, and which discuss it, so you'll understand better what you're getting into. And there may well be one class separate from this one on another night where we talk about taking refuge. And also, if you wish to take refuge, one of the requirements is that you have a conversation with me. We can do it on Zoom or FaceTime or even the phone at your convenience to talk about it. And so there'll be more. For now, I'm going to turn this over to Barry, who's going to be talking about chapter 5. So, Barry, take it away.
Yes, indeed. First of all, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thumbs up.
Thank you, Karen Sue. Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to see all these faces.
Yeah, we got a full house here, 43 people. Hey, geez, I got a little bit of stage fright. So this chapter, joining study and practice, and there's a lot in here. A lot in here is very interesting. Study and practice are essential. They are the foundation for teaching this path, the path of the Buddha Dharma. And they complement each other in different ways. And in fact, both are necessary. Study and practice, we're talking about what's happening right now. Study, if you're paying attention. Practice being meditation. He also uses the terms intellect and intuition. They each have their own function and ways to work with them, and ways in which they interact and complement each other. And it's important to have some understanding of how that all works. So, study, first of all, is where we're offered new possibilities, new views, and where we use our intellect to come to new understandings. New understandings of who we are, what the world is, and the view is important, very important. It's the attitude, the view. We come into this with a view, and we call that view samsara. And the samsaric view is that things are not as they should be. I am not as I should be. I need to change myself and the world around me so that I can be happy. In the Dharma, a very different view is presented, that the world simply is as it is, and that all of that struggle and conflict, judgment, confusion that we are experiencing is just confusion and a waste of time. That this I that needs to be fixed does not actually exist. That the cessation of suffering is possible. So studying is where we begin to understand this new view, and it points the way so that in meditation, as we quiet our minds and there's an opening, we can begin to recognize that in our own experience. So study is about knowing, meditation is about being, about not just understanding intellectually, but a deeper intuitive knowing of it. So to truly understand the Dharma, we need to cut through the obfuscations, distractions of our habitual churning of our thoughts, be able to hear ourselves think or to think clearly. He says in the reading, the mark of patience is the lessening of the kleshas, our neurotic thought patterns. The kleshas, here we're usually referring to that as ego. But it is all this stuff that goes on, our distracting and misleading patterns of thought, our constant seeking of relief, restlessness, dissatisfaction. We can start to cut through this in meditation. We quiet our minds and start to become aware of the nature of the never-ending stories. And this gives us the ability to start stepping out of them and back into reality. He says, it is necessary to practice mindfulness utterly and completely. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the nature of the Buddhist path is transformational. It's not just learning something new. The teachings of the Buddha are pointing to an experience of enlightened mind. And that is not something that can be really accurately conveyed just through words. And that's an important part of how study and practice work together. The Buddha is saying, hey, I can see this. You can too. And in meditation is where we can start to actually experience these things. He says here, I found this interesting, the mark of learning is gentleness. Isn't that interesting? I see this as both a way to approach study and also the result of it. That it's, it's counterproductive to push yourself too hard or to approach the study with some expectation that you'll reach some amazing new plateau next week or something like that. Settle in and take the teachings as they come. Take in what you can. Don't fixate on anything you don't understand. The Dharma is a path, after all. and new things are coming into view all the time. Ask questions. A good attitude is curiosity. He says, with gentleness, what you study becomes part of your psychological geography. So, meditation isn't just about experiences you may have in formal meditation like we were just doing. We're training and calming our mind. We call it practice, after all. We're practicing the art of being fully human. He says, how to be in your life is meditation practice. How to be in your life, being upright, alert, cheerful, ready for anything, and doing this in every moment of our life. How to understand your life is scholarship. And there's another element here too, which is that of guidance. After all, what do some of these words mean? Does being upright mean being arrogant? Does cheerful mean always wearing a smile and while the world falls apart all around you? So a certain amount of precision and intellect is necessary here. Now, traditionally, there's been a presentation, I guess, of these teachings as the three wheels of education or of learning. And these teachings go all the way back to the great universities in India, Buddhist universities, usually presented as the wheel of study, the wheel of meditation, and the wheel of activity. We've spoken here more commonly of meditation, study, and contemplation. And in that presentation, meditation is where we develop the ability to put the teachings into practice. Study tells us how to do it. And contemplation is where we put the two together. So it's another way to look at things. Now, for the enlightened mind, there is no difference between study, meditation, and contemplation. Becoming enlightened changes the experience of everything. So what we're presenting here is a kind of a fruitional view. This is where we're going, and here's how to do it. So that is one way to look at study and meditation. Also, meditation is very helpful for studying, just to be able to think clearly, to reduce distraction. Otherwise, it can be very difficult to concentrate and really think about this stuff. You're off somewhere else. You may have noticed that we have a period of meditation before each class. And when we were meeting here in Irvington down at the Buddhist Center, we would start each Sunday morning presentation with a sitting meditation, and then there'd be a talk. And then after lunch, we'd have classes, and each class would start with meditation and then a talk. And there was a time when I started getting kind of like, what's with all that? Well, it's important. So that's being demonstrated here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. he talks about thinking dharmically. See that he says the Dharma is not once removed. You start from the immediate situation, your mind and body, and you work with what you have. So you may encounter teachings along the way you seem esoteric or far out, ineffable. Well, like I said, some of this stuff can be. But that's just because we haven't not yet come to an understanding of these to really fully integrate them. And so you just take it in. And he says that practice meditation so that our mind may be one with the Dharma. And that means that whatever you think, any flicker of thought that occurs becomes a dharmic thought. That is why we practice meditation. Being presented here, see, is a picture, a model of being fully immersed in the Dharma, but being a fully dharmic person, being a full human being. It is the view of enlightened mind. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there, and I encourage you to ask questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
He talks about that you cannot become a real good enlightened person if you do not understand what your life is all about. I'm assuming that that means in a given moment in a day, because I certainly have no idea what my life is all about right now in this very moment. as a total, no clue. So I guess the most I can offer myself is to meet yourself where you are, which is what you just said not long ago. So if you're honest and you're starting with what you have right now, is that a small, like a sliver of what he's talking about in a realistic novice way?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. More than a sliver, actually. The implication here is that we're training ourselves to see things as they are, to start to realize that our whatever self-criticism or judgment or valuation or any of that stuff are just thoughts. They have no substance. That in meditation, you actually begin to make friends with yourself in an important way by opening to seeing what simply is. And to be a fully dharmic person, to live in the present, you do have to step out of the dreams, out of the spinning of the wheels. You know, that one of the things that happens is that you, at some point, you start to see that just how ridiculous it is that a moment ago you were replaying something for the 73rd time in your imagination. It's like, it's crazy. And you shift your allegiance, you know, that those things become less and less important. They're there, you see them. They can actually be entertaining. And to the extent that you can do that, then you can start to be more of a whole person. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Whoops, where'd John go? We need another question here. John's not back. Comment, complaint?
I have a question, Danielle. I think in that chapter it was saying that, you know, once you get more dharmically aware or whatever, you start to know how to deal with things, or you know what decisions to make. Do you know what I'm saying? That part. And I was like, okay, because I don't really ever know what's going on. Just like, it's very hard to make decisions. So I was just wondering what they, you know, meant by that.
Actually, well, were you saying something, John?
No.
Oh, okay. That's actually related in a way, because the less distracted you are by your preoccupations and anxieties and things, you see things more clearly, that you can take in what's going on without having the immediate reflex of trying to change it or need it to be different or questioning yourself or any of that. You can just see it. You just see it, you witness it. And in doing that, you can respond more accurately. That what gets in the way of making good decisions is all of this obfuscation that normally occupies us. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'd like to add to that too. Going back to what Barry said about the two aspects of study and practice, and then action or contemplation, these three wheels of learning: study, practice, and then sometimes the third wheel is action, sometimes it's contemplation. We come to this path with a very describable worldview, all of us. We see it in terms of me, my path, and then the world out there. So there's I and other. And this is the definition of samsara, that samsara, the world is split between I and other, and we constantly are engaged in a problematic relationship. We want to maximize our pleasure, minimize our pain by manipulating these two poles, these constant poles. And our thoughts are all about that, descriptions of that. And what Buddhism begins to do is what this path begins to do is we're shifting our allegiance from these dualistic thoughts of I and other, which are full of struggle, full of unhappiness, wishing things were otherwise, wanting to manipulate these two poles of I and other so that things could be better. And instead, what we're doing is shifting our allegiance to awareness of the world as it is right now, beyond thought. We all have so many different thoughts and versions of our interpretations of the world. They're all idiosyncratic. To me, each one of us has different ones of them. They can't all be right. A lot of them are very conflicting. Our thoughts, our philosophies, our understandings. But what is beyond thought, and this is the meditation aspect, is mindfulness. And that's what we come back to again and again. That is the heart of Buddhist practice. we study because we all come to this with a particular worldview, this worldview I've just described. I, other, and problems about I and other, and we have variations about how we see that relationship and are going to solve the problem. And what Buddhism offers is a very different view. It's a view, and what it's saying is that I and other are just myths. They are fictions, they are stories that we tell ourselves. That's the intellectual side of Buddhism. It's offering a different view, a different story, one we've perhaps never thought of. And that's very helpful. It sort of breaks up our constant habitual way of responding and looking at the world. And then we have to put that into practice to actually make it real. And that's what we do with meditation. And the way in which we do it with meditation is by coming back to awareness of this present moment. It's called mindfulness. Coming back from dreams, any kind of thought, to just simple awareness of this. And what the teachings are telling us is that this is what is real. That all the rest of it, the thoughts, are just stories. Each one of us having different stories, slightly different, vastly different. Stories that we tell ourselves, which we can go to war about even. And meanwhile, it's all within the realm of thought. And it's all about the past and the future. Struggle, wanting things to be different. And so, what happens when we begin to practice is that we begin to shift our allegiance, our loyalty from these stories, which are our loyalty is very profoundly in the stories. We walk down the street and we're thinking, oh, that's so-and-so, they shouldn't have done this to me, and oh, I really like this other person, and I'm going to, and blah, blah, blah. And we're telling ourselves these endless stories. They're sort of just like the TV dramas that we watch or the movies. They're fraught. They're all about the past and the future. They're all about a hero or a heroine, me, who's on a path to some better place to be, hopefully. And when you watch a story like on TV or in the movies, if the hero or the heroine gets what they want fast, well, the story's over. So it's not a particularly interesting story. The interesting stories are the ones where the hero or the heroine is on an arc towards some object of desire and obstacles arise. All kinds of things that they have to overcome to get there. And then you've got a drama and it grips us and we say, gee, will they get it? Will they succeed? And we get caught up in the drama because these are our dramas, the same kind. So really, it's a matter of shifting one's loyalty. He says here, thinking dharmically, towards the end of this chapter. Thinking dharmically does not mean you always think religious thoughts, or that you become a holy person or a holy woman, monk or a nun. It means that you become a mindful person. Mindful, that you come present. You're here. So that when someone calls your name, you're not lost in a dream somewhere and you don't even respond. And we've all experienced that, right? But you're here, you're ready to respond. And there's no particularly prescriptive way of responding. We find what's appropriate, and what's appropriate is what celebrates this life as it arises in the present moment. What gives it value and gives it our love and appreciation.
We do have a question, John.
Okay.
Mary?
Yeah, I think also for me, the last paragraph on that same page, John, when it talks about the Dharma, for me, it said the Dharma should be an antidote for desire, and that Dharma means taming the mind and being free from desire. And then I like the definition. Desire is anything that causes us to look for something other than what we normally perceive. Desire is the excess baggage of mind. And therefore, sitting practice is known as the practice of taming. We are taming ourselves. So I kind of like that. For me, that helped me because it's that word desire that brings in the I and what I want and how I want things to be different. And so if I can get that idea of the desire and kind of, be careful of that. That's that storyline that you talk about, creating the storyline you want, and like the previous chapter, you want more entertainment in your life, or you dramatize or whatever. I don't know. That really spoke to me, that last paragraph, very well.
It's a terrific paragraph. You're absolutely right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I love it. He says, the Buddhist said that Dharma means taming the mind and being free from desire. Desire is anything that causes us to look for something other than what we normally perceive. We imagine this other thing, this better thing to be. In contrast, normal perception is just a simple business affair. Desire is the excess baggage of mind. What a phrase. It's like you don't need it. It's excess baggage. So in order to tame desire, the mind has to be tamed. Therefore, sitting practice is known as the practice of taming. We are taming ourselves. We are taming desire. We are getting rid of this excess baggage of mind, wanting something other than what is right here now. It's a mean thing to do, to want something other than what's here now. It's like we're dissing it, we're saying this isn't enough, what we've been given. It has a quality of crassness to it. And yet we do it all the time. We want things to be different.
Yeah, because I was going to say, John, there are times when, I want things to be different. And that idea of taming the mind coming back to, and that's why I'm beginning to see, the more I meditate, I'm beginning to develop more mindfulness.
Let's go on to the next chapter. Hold on a second. Achieving sanity here on earth. And he talks about the necessity of intelligence, and that there's intelligence. The word for intelligence at this level of the path is prajna. Pra is an intensifier. Jnana is a root, one of the roots. It's a root of one of the words to know. So it's sort of super knowing or better knowing. And there's lower prajna and higher prajna. Lower prajna is ordinary intelligence. It means you're clever, it means you're smart. You can do a lot of math problems, or, maybe you know languages, and you have that kind of, maybe you study philosophy and can teach it, who knows what. Intellectual intelligence. Higher prajna, he calls it the ability to separate the dharmas. This is a reference, we don't even need to go into this. It's a reference to a particular aspect of philosophy in Buddhism at this point. But what it really means is that we begin to be able to separate what is happening now from our evaluations and judgments of it, our good and bad, our wishing things were otherwise. We're saying, no, this isn't enough. I want it to be whatever, X, Y, Z. And this higher prajna is beginning to separate that out and be able so that we can see things just as they are without those overlays of conceptualization. He says, and now we get to the whole teaching which dominates this path, which is the teaching of non-theism. This is a core aspect of Buddhism. It's not atheism, because atheism is another belief. Buddhism recommends against all beliefs, including atheism and theism, because what it's recommending is mindful awareness. And mindful awareness has nothing to do with belief of any kind. Belief is an overlay, it's another thought. It only lives in thought. So in the 2nd century AD, there was a great Buddhist, I think I've mentioned him, Nagarjuna, And he wrote his magnum opus was a thing called The Root Verses on the Middle Way. And the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, for those of you who ever studied this, there are a few here, I know. And in this, he just attacks logically any assertion, any belief, including cause and effect, including that things have beginnings and end. Here's a very simple one. I'll just give it to you. I gave you cause and effect a few weeks ago. Things have beginnings and ends. There's an assertion. And Nagarjuna argues, well, if you assert that things have beginnings, then you must agree that there is a beginning to the beginning. And the opponent says, yes, there's always a beginning to the beginning. And then Nagarjuna says, well, if you agree that there's a beginning to the beginning, then you must also agree that there is a beginning to the beginning of the beginning. See where this is going? Never ends. You know. And one of the main tools that Nagarjuna uses, a logical tool, he uses it on some different aspects of logic, which were actually codified in the West much, much later, centuries later, than the rules of logic. And this one is called reductio ad absurdum. It's a reduction to absurdity. So if you assert that there's a beginning, you get caught up in that reductio ad absurdum, and the person loses the argument. And basically what Buddhism is saying is that the only truth is experiential. It's in the moment, now. And that mindfulness is the way in which we experience this. Study points us to it. Study, what does it do? It confounds our preconceptions and blows them up. And then also points us toward experiential understanding. It's said in Buddhism that, there, especially at this level of the path, there are what are called the two truths, the absolute truth and the relative truth. The relative truth lies in words. And it has to do with how we describe our lives and the world around us in word. And the point about the relative truth is that it is only useful as a pointer to our experience. And it's useful at particular times and places and for particular people. What's useful for one person at a particular time and place may be utterly useless to another. Words are just clever, useful devices. The real truth, the absolute truth, is what we experience with our mindfulness when we come back into this present moment, now, here. And that's why meditation, both on the cushion and in your daily life, is a constant coming back. You realize that you're lost in thought, and you let it go, and you come back to awareness of what is happening in the present. And that awareness is all the time. It's always here, that awareness. So the coming back is really a matter of giving up effort, giving up confusion, and coming back to this awareness which was always here. It's so simple. I'm sitting here and there's a refrigerator and here's my computer and here are all of you, and it's very simple to come back. And that is the practice of mindfulness. So he spends a lot of time in this chapter talking about non-theism. Theism assumes that I'm here and something superior to me, God, whatever you want to call it, is out there. And this God has the ability to judge me, to set standards, to do things for me or to me. And what Buddhism is saying is, this is an imaginary construct, the main purpose of which is to prove that I'm here, to keep the story of I alive. There are lots of ways in which we keep the story of I alive. Some of them are very unpleasant, as in self-attack. I'm a terrible person. I'm a mess. I'm unhappy. I'm a failure. People don't like me. These are negative stories. And the interesting thing about them is that they keep the whole drama of I going. As soon as you stop telling these stories and come back to mindfulness, I is gone. And so the whole thing about theism is that it's very seductive because it affirms the reality, the theoretical reality of this other out there, call it God, call it whatever you like, and me, I. And there's a whole story in each religion, theistic religion, builds up stories about this relationship between this theism out there, I mean God, and me, I, and what has to happen between us. It's actually very difficult. It's quite a challenge to give that up because we're giving up any kind of orientation that tells us where we are and who we are. Instead, we're coming back into this open dimension of now, wakefulness. And it has no reference points, doesn't tell us where we are. And that can be actually very frightening. On the plus side, when we come back into this present moment, then we begin to appreciate this world in all its vividness, its color, its heat, its love, the love of what is arising in this present moment. They say of the things that, if you study, we've talked about this before, the three bodies of the Buddha. There are three aspects of reality. That when we come back into the present moment, everything is arising and passing away instantaneously. That's the first body of the Buddha. As it does, it communicates qualities that are so vivid to us. Red, blue, sweet, sour, sharp, dull, whatever it might be. And then the third quality is that all of this arises with enormous heat, with compassion, with beauty that moves us, that touches our hearts. So he says, truth is actually what happens versus the wishful, hopeful thinking for blessings or magic. And the interesting thing is that the real blessings that Buddhism says do happen all happen when we come back into this present moment, when we begin to appreciate our lives as they're arising now. And of course, what is arising now is a product of the past, and it contains the potential for the future in it. But the thoughts, the belief in the past and the future, as though we concretize them, that's all fiction. And you find individual salvation within you, you become Buddha. We depend on ourselves, not on an external savior. So there are these, and then he goes back and we just start talking about the 4 norms, or 4 norms of Dharma, which are sometimes called the 4 marks of existence. And we've covered them before. That in this present moment, these 4 qualities in here, and the first one is impermanence. And I think I've told you the story, I'll just repeat it again, that Suzuki Roshi, the master of Zen Center, was once asked, what is the essence of Buddhism? By David Chadwick, who eventually wrote a biography of Roshi called Crooked Cucumber. I recommend it. And in the introduction, he describes this interchange with Roshi. He says, could you describe just Buddhism, the essence of Buddhism, in a few words? He didn't expect Roshi to answer. And Roshi said, everything changes. The heart of Buddhism. Everything changes. Why is it the heart? Because it's in the present moment. It's all changing now as you turn your head, as these words come out and disappear, as your attention shifts from whatever the screen you're looking at to maybe the your foot that's gone to sleep, who knows? It can be all kinds of things, but one's attention, one's world is changing momentarily in the moment. And that is the very essence of impermanence. It also means, on a sort of more conceptual level, everything is dying. You know, we're all getting old. Can't see it happening, but we know it did. and the world is changing moment by moment. Everything has a half-life, you know, to put it in scientific terms. The second quality is suffering. And what he says is, this is so harsh, in the samsaric world, the world of confusion, there is no such thing as enjoyment at all. And in the nirvanic world, the enlightened world, you're not here to enjoy it. That's not the point. So I once asked him, I once said, well, maybe this will come later. Yeah, we'll just go on. Egolessness. We've already discussed this. We would like to reify and make solid our sense of self, but we can't. It's constantly dissolving. I mean, just look at all the gray hairs in this room. That's self. Where did the 25-year-old go? Where did the self go of even a minute ago? That thinking self. We can't even remember what we were thinking 30 seconds ago. And so he says, in the samsaric world, there is no such thing as enjoyment at all. He says, egolessness versus becoming a god. You are simply absorbed in reality, clear thinking, clarity and ordinariness. So there are two ways to come, as I said before, to come at this issue of egolessness. One is that you can come at it logically and you can intellectually, and you can understand the arguments against this and why ego is just a myth or a fiction. But experientially, every time we come out of thought and into mindful awareness of this present moment, there is no room for I, for the I statement. It just goes silent. It disappears. And that's perhaps the more profound way to experience egolessness. We just come 100% present here in this present moment, and I, there's no room for it. Finally, peace. On the theistic path, you are hoping for tranquility or euphoria. On the non-theistic path, peace is the absence of pain and grasping, period. It's an absence. It's not the presence of some kind of pleasurable state. It's just an absence of all of the turmoil of neurosis. And he takes this point and makes it further in this chapter. So he says, how to view reality. All the four norms, they're there in everything we do. He says, snap our fingers, hiccup, sneeze, fart, or burp. They all contain these four norms of impermanence, egolessness, peace, which is the absence of struggle, of pain, and what did I miss? Suffering. He says, with the first two, impermanence and suffering, you begin to realize that everything altogether is marked by overwhelming suffering. We're such optimists in our thoughts, but we all are continually suffering. And what the teachings are saying is that even when we experience pleasure, it's compared to the real Dharma, it's full of suffering. Because for one thing, that pleasure is fleeting and it's dissolving while it's happening. And we know that. With the third, impermanence, egolessness, and with third, egolessness, you realize that there is no one to suffer because of egolessness. That takes care of having a grudge or being angry at anybody. How about that? If you don't exist, then how can you have a grudge or be angry? In the end, with the fourth norm, you realize that nothing exists but peace, which is vacant. You see that peace does not simply mean having a peaceful state of mind. It means that everything is wiped out altogether. That means by everything, he means the hope and the fear, the wanting it to be better, the wanting fear that it'll be worse. And so we practice meditation and we transcend spirituality altogether. Spirituality is wanting to discover holiness. Wanting to be on the side of right, the side of truth, the side of good. And true meditation transcends that. Non-theism is absent your particular desires, wishes, hope. Non-theism has none of that. It is pure science. You begin to discover your hollowness, your non-existence, which could be the key. And then action. Action is the beginning to put all of this into reality. When we begin to go into action with this kind of state of mind, then it becomes even more real. And it's hard to go into action because when we go into action, we have to give up any kind of knowingness, any kind of judgment, any kind of saying, okay, this is going to be right. Now I'm on the side of Dharma. That all goes. When you go into action, you let all of those mental constructs fly away. You can't hold on to them. And the result is having nothing to give up. And this is very interesting because this is a description of what we can expect on the path. He says, your neurosis just goes away rather than having to be given up because you have practiced non-theistically and non-spiritually materialistically. What that means is that we've given up the desire to get something from the practice. And instead, we're just coming present, which is an ultimate act of respect for this world, for this life. It is an expression of our willingness to value this world and this life just for what it is, without hoping for anything more, without hoping for some kind of confirmation, some pat on the back, some special reward, which could be very disappointing. I mean, there are lots of descriptions of the Buddhist path that make it sound very glorious. And yet, in the end, it all comes down to just being a simple, ordinary human being on this earth. That's what the Buddha was. And we could turn that into something extraordinary, and then that's our spiritual materialism again. That's our wanting to get something for me out of all this. It's going to be terrific. When I get enlightened, oh, I'll just be so happy. I'll be free of suffering. And what he's saying here is, You have nothing to give up. Your neurosis just goes away. When you give things up, they will come back. Because if you're giving up temptation, there is no external tempter. It's you, you're the tempter, and it'll repeat. So what the path is doing is wearing out this whole mechanism of looking for a reward from me. It's wearing that out. We are becoming ordinary human beings, citizens of this earth, citizens of the cosmos, awake, aware, present, without any agenda, trying to get something out of it. And the result of non-theism is liberation. But that liberation isn't based on trying to race to heaven after your death. It is based on achieving fundamental sanity here on earth and wherever we wind up. And all of this is based on personal experience. In the immediate moment, we feel that we have actually experienced reality. I'm just going to read the last paragraph. To review, having developed the non-theistic view. Now remember, non-theism is just, it's not solely about not believing in God. What it's about is not looking for an external reference point to prove that I'm here and that's there, at the very least, and then to give me stuff, which is hopeful idea that what's out there, this theistic idea, was going to give me things like blessings, like make me happy, like salvation. And he says that we're giving that up, that non-theistic view. The theistic view. And we develop this non-theistic view, and you develop a meditation practice that transcends the highest euphoria of spirituality, as well as ordinary worldly materialism, like getting rich. Then you develop action that transcends the extremes of asceticism and indulgence. This is just what the Buddha did. The Buddha tried everything. I mean, he lived the life of a prince, and then he went off and became an ultimate ascetic, became skinny as a rail because he didn't eat anything and practiced tortures of all kinds. And it was only when he gave up those two extremes that he woke up. Then you develop action that transcends the extremes of asceticism and indulgence. You practice the middle way. It's the middle way between any extreme. Having done all that, the result is that you have nothing to give up. Everything just goes. You're practicing, you're coming back to awareness again and again. It just goes. Your neurosis. Without your having to give them up or push them out, obstacles begin to lift. We could repeat again and again at the Hinayana level, at the Mahayana level, and the Vajrayana level, the view of the four norms of Dharma: suffering, egolessness, impermanence, and peace. The practice that transcends worldly concepts, the action that is beyond extremes, and the result that the obstacles remove themselves. There are stages on the path where we have moments of aha. We see things that we hadn't seen before. There are stages on the path that can be very pleasurable, where we realize that we're free of some kind of suffering. These are described, these different stages. And the constant injunction to us as we progress along the path is see them. They're called nyam. Nyam could be translated as blessings or enjoyments. And they come to us on the path. And you see them and you let them go. There's an old Zen saying that I've always loved. It's kind of appropriate here. He said, it goes like this. In the end, there is no Buddha, there is no Dharma, there is nothing profound. The Tibetan path, they say that the last stage of the path, beyond Ati, beyond Dzogchen, beyond the great perfection, is called old dog. And it's like you're an old dog lying in the dirt, swatting away the flies with your tail, just there. So this is a pretty challenging chapter, I'd say. And we could have a discussion if you'd like.
Tony had her hand up earlier.
Anybody? Tony?
So I'm wondering, would you make a distinction between different Buddhist thought as far as holding on to beliefs and not striving? Because I have some concepts about Buddhism that don't completely fit with what I'm reading, what Trungpa Rinpoche is writing in the text. And I know that it varies around the world, and I just am wondering if you personally would make a distinction.
We're talking about the kind of Buddhism. It's really the purest form of Buddhism. It's Zen. It's the meditational Buddhism of Tibet. There are aspects of Buddhism where people actually believe or seem to believe in external deities, and they worship them. These are the more populous versions of religion, not the meditative versions of religion. And they're generally ethnic. It might involve worship of Tara, who's a symbol of compassion, as an example, or the Buddha and all the different manifestations. So yeah, there are these, but these tend to be, these types of approaches to Buddhism tend to be ethnic and popular and not meditative. They don't adhere in the meditation sects. So yeah, to answer your question. Jane.
I guess I'm struggling with where or where not is fear. If one is experiencing in the moment fear, where does that fit? What does one do with that emotion? It's a feeling. It comes and it goes. It could be totally impermanent. It could meet all the 4 requirements here of suffering, impermanence, etc. But fear is fear. So I don't think it's ego. I don't think it's desire. How would you fit it in? Or how would you take it out? I don't know how to even frame it in this construct.
Thank you. Great question. I'll answer that in 2 parts. The first one, I'll tell you an answer that I heard Trungpa Rinpoche give once to this very question. Actually, the question that he was asked was, what is the purpose of fear? And he said, the purpose of fear is to prove that I exist. The second thing is this, that fear lives in our thoughts about the past and the future. Every time you come completely into the present, awake, mindful, fear dissolves. And that's why they say that meditation practice, its main function or its first function is to dissolve the kleshas. Kleshas are defilements that's usually translated. It means the emotions, of which fear is one. So is anger and jealousy and pride, and all of these emotions live in thought about I and other. And those thoughts happen in the past and the future. So every time we come present, we're dissolving them. And this is why fear and all of the other upsetting emotions dissolve in the experience of meditation practice. That's really the first effect.
To accept that, might one need to take a leap of faith?
Now, leaps of faith are not recommended either.
I know, that's why. I mean,
To accept that.
I'm challenging some of the, you know, the context here, but, as, you know, and it doesn't have to be theistic to, you know, to listen, to meditate, to spend what might be many, many, many years on this path, to accept that, to believe in it. I think it is a belief system, and I think it requires a leap of faith. You know, just, I mean, it's all the things we've been talking about, meditating, and looking at, but without all I could say is that a leap of faith in the same way one would, you know, have a spiritual belief, or a belief that there's something other than I. That's really what faith is about. It's that there's not just I.
I think that when you listen to the intellectual aspect of the teachings, you might take it as saying, yes, that makes sense to me, but I don't really experience it yet. And then you practice meditation. And meditation is where it becomes real. And it doesn't involve a belief. It involves an acknowledgement of one's own experience that comes through deepening meditation practice. And it might take a while, but meditation practice is always the process of coming present out of any thought, including belief, including leaps of faith. It's really very practical. It's just being here for your life. You know, we might be walking down the street thinking about heaven, you know, and God, and completely step out into traffic and get hit by a car, you know, because we're so absorbed in our thoughts. Meditation is all about living your life in a very practical, awake, aware way. And I think that the truth of these teachings, to the extent that they are true, remember it's relative truth, usefully true at a particular time and place, and for particular people, only comes through the practice. And as it comes through the practice, we let the dogma of Buddhism go. Actually, be a dogmatic or what's the word? An intellectual Buddhist, you know, and be, you know, on a soapbox about it. Someone like Trungpa Rinpoche would hate it. It's sort of the ultimate twist.
Oh, John?
Yeah?
I think we need to wrap it up pretty soon.
Okay, well, Philip,
Thank you, John.
something.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yes, it absolutely does. Gives me a lot to not think about.
I'd like to talk to you more about it, but maybe after.
Sure. Another time, yes.
Hey, Philip, and if people have to go, we can just go. But this is.
So I'm sorry, but could you repeat,
a difficult chapter? Yeah.
could you repeat that old Zen expression? In the end, there is no Buddha, there is no Dharma,
There is nothing profound.
there is nothing profound.
It's
Thanks.
a old Zen slogan. Another one that's like that is kill the Buddha.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another Zen one. They like those kinds of things. Who had their hand up? No? Ah, yeah. Danielle.
Okay, it's kind of like Tony's question, but all the different forms of Buddhism, because like my stepmom is Japanese and she was Buddhist, or you know, she doesn't really practice, but they have like, they use it as for like a religion, and they have like rituals, you know, that they do, like burial rituals and things that they have to do, just like kind of like Catholicism, you know. And so I think that's confusing, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that the ethnic manifestations of Buddhism that are more popular, they're popularly oriented and are not meditative, usually, that I know of, are very akin to, in their appearance, to Christianity and Judaism, in the sense of going to a place and worshiping an external deity.
Yeah.
The meditation sects are utterly different. And Tibetan Buddhism is largely a matter of the meditation sects, especially at its higher levels, and certainly Zen and Chan in China, which is the meditation Buddhism of China. All of these are synchronous with what we've been discussing tonight, these chapters.
Because they don't seem to practice as much meditation. They just, you have more ritual, you know, and stuff. So
Right.
that's interesting.
Sure. Same thing in the Catholic Church, or wherever. No, we're talking about really the purest form of Buddhism. This is meditation Buddhism. This is Buddhism that is meant to get people enlightened. And it's not akin to normal religion. In fact, I think, there in India, there wasn't even a word for religion. And Buddhism doesn't really correspond to what is normally meant by religion. Normally, when you talk about religion, you talk about a system of beliefs, usually in an external deity. And Buddhism simply isn't that at this level.
No.
Mika, sorry.
Yeah.
Mispronounce it.
Just two things. One, about a leap of faith. So just experientially, I find meditating at this point, I find meditating very difficult. So as I meditate, I meditate because I'm practicing a leap of faith. I'm meditating because I've decided that I agree with the path and the goals and the intellectual reasoning, and therefore I meditate. So it's sort of like a leap of faith. I'm taking a leap of faith that this is so I do it, even though it's different. And I would say that's often the case in any difficult practice. When I used to practice Aikido and found it very difficult, I was always, don't worry, just fake it. Don't imagine that you're going to be good very, very quickly. Just do it and do it and do it and do it, and it will take care of itself. The same sort of thing. And a little bit, I have a little problem sometimes with the reading, because it does say it's hard, it's difficult, but it's also presented as meditation as being simple and direct and straightforward. Sort of like 1, 2, 3. This is what you do, and it's direct and clear. But in fact, it's really complicated. Really complicated to practice while you're alive the giving up of desire. Because of course you can't really just give up desire. While you sit in the moment and even adhere to the here and now, you want some things to be different. If you give up yourself theoretically, then you give up agency. If everybody who was on this path gave up agency, Trump would be president forever. So you don't really want that. But while you're not wanting that, then you're practicing desire. So it's sort of like a contradiction. You have to somehow keep two things running at the same time. You have to be experiencing wanting to give up agency, but also knowing that you have to keep a hold of agency, because you have to be an agent in the world. Otherwise, everything goes to hell quicker. So I find it complicated and not simple. And sometimes when I read that, oh, this is very simple, I say, oh my God, not to me. So that's just a comment. I'm not quite sure what to do with that dichotomy, but I'm aware that, the path is full of dichotomies. Contradictions.
So Mika, are you looking at me right now? You're looking at, because your images, you're looking across.
Oh, and that's just my count. Yes, I'm looking. Yes. Whoop. Well, that didn't help. There we go.
Okay. Right now,
Yeah. Problem.
look at me,
Trying.
my image. Are you?
I'm trying. Hold on. Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Okay. You don't
All
have,
the time. I'm looking.
yeah. And you're actually seeing me, you're hearing me.
Yep.
My motion. You don't have to make an effort. It's just there for you.
Mhm.
The effort is an overlay, if there is any effort.
Mhm.
That is the awareness of meditation. That simple awareness of just effortlessly taking it in, whatever it may be. Now, we tend to drift off into dreams, into thoughts. Yeah, but what about, or gee, tomorrow I'd like a hot dog, or whatever it might be. And so we use these techniques of meditation to bring us back from dream. But when we come back to awareness, it's as simple as this. It's as simple as your ability to hear these words and see this image without any effort. I mean, that's who we are. And that's what it means to be a human being. And that's what we're coming back to on the Buddhist path. And the more we do it, the more effortless it becomes. Effort just clouds it. In fact, when we're making an effort, we're not here. We're off in the effort, in the struggle, whatever it might be.
Mhm. Yes, right. I understand.
So you just come back to this. This is what meditation is. You come back. If you're resting here in the space, you come back to this space. If you're working with the breath, you come back to the breath, just like you are hearing these words and seeing me touch my chest. It's that effortlessness. Work with it. That's what meditation is all about. It's coming back to this effortless, natural being that we all have. Giving up the complications, giving up all the struggle. But all of that just dissolves. And that's what he meant when he said that the suffering dissolves. And then it doesn't mean that we become vegetables. Not at all. Then we can act with much greater clarity and power in the moment, in contact, awake, not lost in dreams. Those dreams are terrible. They're full of prejudice and all kinds of nasty stuff. Hatreds, and we give them up, and then we do what's right. What is life affirming? What affirms the beauty and the value of this life as it arises now? Sometimes it might even open our hearts. In the morning meditation this morning, who was there? Anybody?
Yeah.
People. I went back and read that chat that Steph put in. It almost made me cry. You could, if you have the recording, it's really beautiful. A woman came and talked about working with a horse and what it meant to her. And when you experience something that's so genuine and powerful and open, it can open your heart too. And that's what happens in the meditative awareness, is that we open to this world with its tenderness and its beauty. And the hallmark of the awareness is effortlessness. Now, there may be a lot of effort to get there because you've got to get your butt down on the cushion. That's the hardest part of meditating. And then you have to, when you find that you're thinking, you have to say, oh, I'm thinking, and you come back And there's an effort in that. But when you are back, just like your ability to hear these words, that's effortless. So the awareness is effortless. What takes some effort is to deal with our neurosis, to clear it away, to come back to this present moment. He said that somewhere in this reading, I think. I don't know, does that help?
Yeah, yes, I understand.
Okay. Yeah, we
Thank you.
really are giving up. This path is a matter of giving up beliefs, giving up self-aggrandizement, and coming in and really claiming our heritage, our birthright, which is our lives as they unfold always now. And they contain the past and the future. You know, our childhood is contained in these aging faces for those of us who are aging, and our futures, they're all here. They're coming, the potential. But this is what's real. And it doesn't last for even an instant. Well, folks, maybe we should end.
Yes,
Very
that's right.
challenging night, huh? Thank you for
Thank you, John.
really, Jane and Mika and everybody else and Tony for really testing this,
Thank you.
and everybody else.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you so much.
Night all.
So
Everyone.
can we close with the dedication of merit?
Yes.
Yes.
This is where giving away the benefits, well, to ourselves, but also to others. And if I can find it. Here we go. No, that's not it. Give me a second if you would. Here we go. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden whose wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance attention from
this world.
may all
be
joy.
joy profound, brilliant, glory.
And these chants are really talking about everything we've discussed tonight. Omniscience just means resting in the present moment. And by doing it, we defeat the enemy wrongdoing and all of this. And the golden sun of the great east is this world as it arises in the present, beautifully, vividly, and so forth. So everybody, have a great week. And I want to make one more thing, offer. I really would love to talk to any of you who want to discuss your meditation practice, and Barry too. And because it's so key, just what Mika and I discussed tonight, and more. Each one of you has your own idiosyncratic way of coming at it, as do I. And if you would like to do that, contact me, email, however, phone, text, whatever you've got. And you can email Path of Awakening Buddhist Center. You can email New York Buddha Dharma, and I'll get it. Okay, because really understanding your meditation practice is the core, and it will bring these teachings. The more we understand it, the more these teachings come to life. Good night.